Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark. And by the way, I had to pay for my own coffee.
Listen, what can I say? Times are hard. And speaking of times being hard, we do have I'll get to my questions in a second, but our friend Gary Muirhead has already triggered a question. I think you probably have the answer right up your sleeve. Here we go. Question today: are we heading for a downturn in new contracts being awarded?
I hold my breath. I think the next 3 months will define the construction industry probably for the next 18 to 24 months. Actually, we're in a very strange situation where the value of projects has gone up this month, but the number of projects is declining. So the next 3 months will be give us a better understanding of what the next 18 months, 2 years is going to give the industry. I can only go on what we see, and at the present moment in time, it's not as rosy as what we've seen in the last 2 years.
And yet, I'm going to ask you my usual first question. The scores on the doors actually suggest that the garden is not too
bad.
Shabby at all.
No, you're dead right. We have this month £5.9 billion worth of new construction orders. It's slightly, we have a marquee project this month, which is £1 billion for Winvic. And they have secured this logistics hub in the Midlands. Now, this will be an ongoing, because you just obviously don't do £1 billion worth of work straight away. They've signed a pre-construction order for it. They've done everything for it. And they've headlined it across many different platforms to say that they've secured this. So we have got this marquee project at the top, which is £1 billion order. If you take that off, we're back to 4.9 billion, which was exactly the same as last month. But what we have got this month is something like 300. Our 5.9 is made up of 367 projects, whereas last month it was 454. So the spread of orders is not so many, and a lot more tier one contractors have secured work this month than, shall we say, the tier twos and beyond.
Yeah, one of the things that was striking last time around was the fact that the regions had upped their game. London wasn't quite the pillar of success it had been, but some of the regions were doing remarkably well. We've already had questions in about Scotland and Wales, as we always do. How are the regions looking? Who was top dog this month?
Well, again, it's spread across the country. If you add the West Midlands and the East Midlands together, the West Midlands have got that huge £1 billion project, and if you add the East Midlands as well, it's near enough 1.5 billion, which outstrips London, which is only very rarely, but it's gone below the £1 billion mark. It's only 800 million. And second this month actually is the Southwest, which has got 1.2 billion, and that's made up of a number of projects. I'm just going to flip screens here. The largest of which is the A417, which Balfour Beatty have picked up. Then there's a military establishment in Tewkesbury, a logistics centre in Bristol, housing in Bristol, and some prison works in Devon as well. So, yeah, this month has seen a more diverse area. But your two viewers, or your two people that live in Scotland and Wales, Scotland has got just over 200 million, whereas I have to say Wales is really lagging behind this month. And let me just look. We're struggling even to get to £37 million worth of work in those two areas.
So it doesn't look particularly good news for Gary Muirhead, doesn't look particularly good news for Ken Hatcher, but Nick Drew will be pleased as punch because he's down in the southwest.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you've already mentioned this Winvic job. That is the number one job. Tell me more about that and take me through the top five.
Yeah, certainly. Right. The Winvic job is it's in Cannock. I'll read exactly what the press release is and what we've been told by them. The £1 billion project will offer something like 8 million square feet of commercial space with state-of-the-art units from 200,000 square meters 200,000 square feet to 1.2 million pounds, 1.2 million square feet. So it's a huge project. Yeah, the pre-construction services agreement is all signed, sealed, and delivered, and off we go from there. So yeah, Winvic have won that. The client is Oxford Properties Group. Second in the table this month is a joint venture between Waits and Kier. Now, this is for a number of prison projects across the UK. And I've just picked up one here because the two of them, we don't know whether they're going to work in tandem, using both their services, or are they going to work individually? But they've picked up these projects. And one of the projects is at HMP Bullington, which is in Bicester. So they've picked it, and there's 6 of them. I think there's 6 of them. I'm just looking down the list here. Yeah, there's 6 of them. And it's over £300 million worth of work that they've got on their order books between the two of them. Third on the list is Kier on their own. And now they've picked up this A417. I said Balfour's picked it up, but it's actually Kier's picked it up. And it's for national highways, and it's the A417 Birdlip bypass Cirencester. And that project's worth £300 million, which is the largest of. They've actually picked up 15 projects this month, 16 projects this month. My eyesight's failing here. So yeah, but they didn't pick up the most projects. This month it's gone to Morgan Sindall. They've picked up 23, but the accumulative total of those 23 is just over 130 million. So it's not quite what Kiers have picked up, which is obviously over the £300 million mark. Fourth on the list is Countryside Properties. So we're back to housing. So housing is obviously going to feature quite heavily in the category side of things. And the largest one of their projects that Countryside have picked up is for phase 2. It's 750 units at Tolworth. So it's not a million miles from where you are, Mark.
Really?
Yeah. And this one is the client for that is the Guinness Partnership. So it's going to be part ownership housing and obviously part of their own housing as well. So they picked up that one. And fourth on the list this month is Skanska. Now they've picked up a £250 million project, which is the one down in the southwest at Tewkesbury. It's a military establishment. It's the Vehicle Storage and Support Programme. The programme consists of major refurbishment and new development of facilities to support capability, including reception, inspection, maintenance works around the camp. So that's the top 5 there. And this month we've only got 232 named businesses as winning and securing work, whereas last month we had 290. So you can see it's a mixed message, really. But if you look underneath all these statistics, it's probably not dissimilar to last month, really.
Another indicator we always look at is the number of companies that have picked up £100 million or more in new work.
Yeah.
How's that looking?
Well, it's improved from last month because we didn't even reach 10 last month. But this month we've got 13 of businesses that have secured over £100 million worth of work. So that's an improvement. That's definitely improved. But as I say, that's more the tier 1 contractors. So the tier 2s and beyond have struggled this month to pick up new orders. And we're concerned that may be a reflection of what's going to happen for the next 3 or 4 months.
You've already alluded to sectors, house building. I assume, despite that £1 million project, I assume that house building is still leading the charge?
Very much so. Let me just get those statistics available there of the data. Yeah. Housing this month is £1.2 billion. And so it does lead the way. But factories and industrial, surprise, with that logistics in there, is over 1.1 billion. And miscellaneous, which is the sweep up of many different things, including some of the military establishments are in there. That's over £1 billion worth of work. So yeah, those 3 lead the way this month, which is no surprise really. Housing, I think, has been at that level for the last, as we say, 3-4 years really, and has supported the construction industry over this period of time.
We are headed into that weird part of the year now, aren't we? The holiday season, when it's almost impossible to put your finger on the pulse, because there is usually a bit of a downturn as people head off on their holidays, assuming they can get past British Airways and British passport control. What are your feelings over the coming months, or do we just sort of hold our breath until September when we start to get some proper figures?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to be doing. As I said, the next 3 months are going to be critical to how the industry, if we see a fall off beyond what we're normally used to, because we can track it through the period of time and everything else, if we see a fall off beyond what we're used to, then probably that will give us an indication of what the next 18 months is going to be like. But yeah, we are into that situation between now where we got July, August and September, where figures do decline because it's difficult to get hold of people. Decision makers are not always there, and letter of intents or contracts aren't signed. So yeah, number of bids in the marketplace is also once again a little bit concerning. But we are seeing a decline in that area. We'll be at a better stage, as I say, by the end of September, early October, to find out what really is going on.
Now, I think it's been a subject you and I have touched on for the past 6 months or so. Obviously, we are still looking at hikes in materials costs. Fuel costs don't seem to have found any form of ceiling. What's the feedback you're getting from the market on those? I guess it's much the same as it was last month and the month before.
Yeah, actually, it's become a little bit worse by way of inflation. I don't think some of the figures that are being reported in the press and in the news are truly reflective of what's going on, which is happening in the marketplace itself. I think there's a lag there. I definitely feel that transport costs are hugely having an impact on how we get our materials from A to B, and also our staff from A to B. And then you put on top of that just general inflationary problems in making those materials, whether it be electricity or whatever. Yeah, that could put a significant halt to a number of projects in the future. Clients may say, let's just take a hold on all of this until we find material costs stabilizing, because I spoke to a number of people last week, and they all said today's rate is totally different to what you may get tomorrow. It's as volatile as that out there.
It seems like a very strange thing. I know we've been here before, but we're talking about just shy of £6 billion. Under normal circumstances, £6 billion, we sat here with big smiles on our faces and raising a glass in congratulations to the industry. And yet there is that feeling of...
Yeah, and exactly what the feeling was when I was speaking to these people. They have work in their pocket, shall we say, but how much are they going to have to delve into their pocket to pay people to finish those works? And that's a concern going forward. And I know that if we see a number of companies go into administration over the next 2 or 3 months, then probably that's a hugely down to the fact of raging inflation, because those projects probably have been tendered for 2 years ago, when prices and materials and labor were totally different. And if they're on a fixed price contract, that could be an issue. And I know there has been another one in the last 10 days or so that's down on the south coast, southwest, that has gone as far for administration. So that's also a concern. All the signals are there that this is going to be the next 3 or 4 months is going to be quite tricky.
Now, we've talked about all things financial, and I'm not going to ask you to comment specifically on the actions or lack thereof of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, but we are immediately post CMA investigation. You run a trade association. You were CEO of a trade association. If the boot was on the other foot and we were talking about the CMA investigation had revealed that some of your members had been found somewhat wanting in the anti-corruption department, what would be your reaction?
Immediately, we would look into the fact of we have a very strict code of practice, which our members sign up to when they join us for their membership. and dealing with information and data like we do in the way of bids and everything else, obviously is very close to what's been going on at the present moment in time. But yeah, we deal with we have this code of practice, and our immediate policy would be to suspend the people involved, or the companies, should I say, not the people, because it's not down to people, it's down to the companies themselves. We would suspend the companies until we did our own investigation, and we would do a full investigation against our code of practice as well as everything else, and we'd look into what has gone on. Now, if that is proven that there has been collusion or whatever's gone on, then our code of practice is quite clear that those people would then be called via the executive would say straight away, unfortunately, you're unable to proceed to be members of the builders conference, and we would have to I suppose the word is get rid of, decline their membership and go from there, really. So there is quite a detailed way of what we've got to do in the code of practice. It's all written down. It's totally transparent what we have to do. Yeah. So we would suspend, first of all, do our investigation, look into it. And if those are proven, it's like anything with whether you're being a member of staff. There is something that happens with a member of staff, then you may have to suspend that person while you do your investigation, and then you come back and say, right, unfortunately, or no, it's not proven, so therefore your membership is maintained.
There's a couple of things that I'd like to unpack, particularly given the fact that you sit on that side of the fence. The first, I guess, is it would be quite difficult to actually make that decision, because a trade association is made up of people that all know each other generally. It would be very hard for you as a CEO to wave goodbye to somebody that you've known for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. I guess that's the first question. But one of the things that I've alluded to today is, have we as an industry created an environment or an atmosphere in which you almost need to cheat the system in order to remain profitable? I've got a bit of a hard on for all things framework related. The very fact that you can spend thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even more than that, just to get on a framework with no guarantee of work. It's kind of skewed things completely towards the client rather than the contractor and subsequently the specialist contractor, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine some of these more complex, and especially in certain trades, some of these more complex bidding processes and what you're doing, because the clients are using the skills of the industry to help them develop or do the projects as well. So they may understand that they need to get rid of, and I will pick demolition because it's a power station, but they don't know how to get rid of that power station. Whereas the industry has got fantastic knowledge to show people how to do it. So the bids or the frameworks may be, we need to get rid of 14 power stations. I'm picking, obviously, we don't know how to do that. We're kind of going a design and build stroke contractor design, or whatever you want to do it. So we'll hand down that responsibility through the actual supply chain. Now that means that those people putting those bids together will probably have to put a team of, could be as many as a dozen people. And if there is no reward at the end of the day, you've got this overhead for, and it could be a 3-month period. You've got an overhead for a 3-month period and the costs all involved with that there is no recompense through any contracts at the end of that, and there still might be right at the end of the day a moratorium from the government to say, no, we're going to stop the demolition of these power stations because there's a huge economic crisis within Ukraine. It's a good example. We need to go back and refire these, redo these power stations. So you may have spent this amount of money and you can't get it back. So is the system broken? Probably there is an element to that, and there is also always the problem where right at the end some business may say, I'll do this for X amount of money, and everybody knows you can't do it for that, but because of time or cost restraints, you may the client may say, oh, I'm going to go with it and I'll suffer the consequences. But, if the project is then delayed because that company goes into administration, that isn't always said within the actual media, is it? It's just a case of saying, okay, this company's gone into administration. Nobody says why. Well, they bid £1,000 when it should have been £1 million for a project. That isn't, those words aren't said anywhere.
No, I mean, going back to the framework thing, I mean, I know you always pointed out whenever we mention frameworks, my personal feeling is, there is no guarantee of work coming from a framework. You might have got yourself on the preferred bidders list, but you might not get work. But even if you do get work, going back to one of the frameworks within demolition relating to the nuclear industry a few years ago, that was a 10-year framework. So as you say, you might spend 100,000, 500,000, £1 million to get yourself in the frame for that. And even if you do win work, it might not be for another 9.5 years. Yeah, that's exactly. An awful lot of overhead to carry for 9.5 years, isn't it?
Yeah. So projects like this, the clients may have to look at it to say, right, okay, we will give you, rather than a pre-construction agreement and putting the money in that. Sometimes there is a value, as we talked about the WinVic. A pre-construction agreement would have been signed most probably because the client there has got an idea to put this amount of square footage in there. He needs the contractor to help him because of their expertise of dealing with large logistics centres. And therefore, in pre-construction agreements, there can be some money from the client to the actual contractor or the team, because it could be a design and build team. So the architect could be getting some cost as well. Maybe that's something on these, marquee significant projects like power stations and everything else. There is a value there given to contractors, and then it ties the client also in to make sure that he's going to do the project as well. And I know just recently there's been a framework announced that there was 18 on the tender list, 18 had made the framework itself. That's fine. So we've spent money there. The issue is also that then they still have to tender or bid for the projects on that framework. So they may be up against 4 or 6 contractors within that framework. So you've done an initial documentation and presentation, which you spent I don't know how much on, and then you still got the bidding process, which can be extraordinarily expensive as well, because you've still got to design up those schemes if they're on a design and build basis in your own costs, and therefore you're tendering against 4 or 5, 6 people without. So even getting on a framework, as you quite rightly say, it might be 9.5 years before you get anything, or you might not got anything at all.
The other thing that strikes me, I realise that the spotlight is very much on all things demolition at the moment with the CMA, but we've been down this road before with ground engineering and rolled lead suppliers as well.
Yes.
And I mean, we're going back probably 2 or 3 years with those two. I've not seen anything within the industry that has changed to ensure that that's not likely to happen again. I think there was a lot of coverage, a lot of publicity about the fact that certain people had been caught bid rigging and that kind of thing and colluding. But I've not seen any sort of industry charter that says, okay, henceforth, we will adopt this new way of working. Nothing's changed at all as far as I can see.
I haven't seen anything either. And that's a disappointment, really. We used to have, there used to be a code of estimating practice that was within the industry itself, which is actually had a framework to say that projects up to a certain value, you could only put 2 or 3 tenderers on the list. Projects up to the next value could have 4 or 5, and then projects above, because it was worthwhile or whatever. What we've also got to look at, some of the information, and this is a big commentary of a lot of our main contractor members, some of the information that is being supplied today to those businesses to bid or be put on a framework is so poor, is ridiculously poor, because the squeeze on the professionals from the client to do a service that is saying, right, okay, you're supposed to bring it up to a certain level, but they're not paying the professionals enough. So if you look at the whole system, you really need to say that it's getting close to a point where it's broken. You know, and everybody is trying to transfer that risk, whether it be a client or a professional or a main contractor or a subcontractor. They're all trying to transfer the risk through the supply or through the project.
And it's a double-edged sword, that one, isn't it? You know, the clients are supplying insufficient or, you know, lack of quality in the information they're supplying, and yet they will still use every means possible, delay payment, retentions, and all that kind of thing. You know, again, I'm certainly not trying one little bit to try and condone the actions of those that have admitted involvement in this bid rigging, but you can kind of see where it's originated from. It's almost forced into it to a degree.
Regretfully, yeah, the whole system needs to stand back. Maybe I don't think people are honest enough. If you ask my own, through the whole process, and what I mean by that is there is a lot of enigmas within the construction industry that really shouldn't go on, and poor information, poor quality documentation. All of this leads to something that is always going to have a problem at the end of the day, whether it be late projects. And then once you get into late projects, you get obviously surveyor, or you get a claim surveyor involved on both sides. And I don't think we've really seen the full shakeout from the COVID issues, whether they have been late finishing a number of projects. I hope clients have taken a reasonable approach to those things to say, okay, yeah, we do understand that this is an exceptional time, but because clients have the money and everything else, have the project, the relationship between a main contractor and a client is sometimes not what it seems. It's quite adversarial, really.
You've just said the words client and reasonable in the same sentence. I'm not sure I've ever heard that before. Gary Muirhead has asked you a question. I know you've alluded to it. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here when I can. Is the availability of building material having an effect on the industry? I'm going to take a wild stab at yes.
Yes. And it's not just one. You can't just say that it's X, Y, or Z. It's the whole industry, the whole material supply chain. And what the construction industry is very good at doing is adapting to that. However, it can only adapt for so long, and it can offer alternatives where originally A was specified, and that's not available for 12, 18, 20 weeks, whereas B does the same thing. However, it doesn't quite look the same, but that's available in 4 to 5, then that's what the construction industry is exceptionally good at, is adapting and putting forward. And that's where clients should recognize the fact that their architects are saying, right, I need a door like X. But because of the knowledge that contractors and construction companies have of many different projects across a wide variety of regions and everything else, they'll be able to offer you an alternative. But if you're looking just specifically at materials, yes, there is an issue. And I can't see it getting any easier, as I say, in the next 6 months, because not only of lack of staff or quality staff, but it's also the cost of materials as well is having an impact on actually manufacturing those materials. Even though it shouldn't have any issues, people are looking at their cash flow to say, I was buying it for X, I can make it now for Y, but my cash flow that I'm only getting paid for is Z. So therefore I can't make everything I need because I haven't got enough cash at bank. So I've got to borrow more, and borrowing is obviously going up. So the economics of the construction industry is at a very, very delicate stage.
There's another point, and I've mentioned this in relation to construction equipment. Excuse me, where you have companies that are loyal to a particular brand of excavator or dump truck, whatever it might be, and you've been buying that for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden, due to COVID, the pandemic, material shortages, you can't get that. So if you want to carry on with that project, you are forced to go and buy another brand. What if you buy another brand and like it? Going back to your analogy of a door, we've always used that door. That's the door we're known for. But we've just tried this door. It's every bit as good. It's readily available. And lo and behold, it's a tenner cheaper. You're probably not going back, are you?
No, you're not. So those material suppliers, manufacturers, machinery manufacturers have got to be fleet of foot to make sure that they are making sure that their cost base is at its best, and therefore not letting those new or their existing clients move somewhere else, because it's very difficult sometimes to get those clients back again. So you really have to be a fleet of foot to understand what's going on, and that puts added pressure on your own business as well, because you're always searching. You've got to improve your client base. And sometimes this is what's not seen, because we're coming out of a period where, to be honest, for the last 2 years, the construction industry has really been at the top of its game, at the top of its working and everything else. And we've still got that probably for the next 6, 9, 12 months. However, beyond is a little bit uncertain. So really, a lot of businesses should be looking now to say to themselves, I've got to maintain my existing clients, but I've also got to look for new clients. Even though I'm really busy, I've still got to look for all these new clients just in case.
Well, I mean, you and I are in the same boat with that. I mean, obviously with your association memberships and me with my advertising. If everything is right in the world, nobody needs us.
No,
because they've got plenty of work coming in. They don't need to advertise. They don't need to be a member of a trade association. They don't need market intelligence. And then the flip side is, when things do take a turn for the worse, nobody can afford advertising, and they decide they can't afford market intelligence at all.
Yeah,
both of which, in my opinion, are completely wrong. But that's the industry as we know, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, we are part of those. Exactly, you put it absolutely perfectly there. Yeah, advertising, you can do it when you've got money coming in and everything else, but do you really need it? No, because I've got work. But then when you haven't got the money, you haven't got enough work coming in, but you need to advertise. Exactly the same with us. It's, as I say, we reckon the next 3 to 4 months is going to be a defining period for construction. If you look at the rolling year, that it is slowly going down. I think last month the rolling year was 73.5 billion, and this month it's 72 billion. So you can see that we are slowly, and if you look towards the end of last year, it was up at 84 billion. So we're slowly going down. We're not back to those damn awful days of 2008 when you and I used to sit together and it was 21 billion pounds and we were all looking at each other saying, where's this industry really going to go? But there is definitely the facts coming through that it's bobbing along, and actually it's just below the surface at the present. It's below the water surface at the moment, and we've just got to somehow improve it. The only possible element, if you noticed in the press this week, that or we've spoken about it as well together, about these 40 or 43 hospital projects. There's now an inquiry to say, where are they? The parliamentary committee are going to sit down. You spoke about these in the manifesto. You keep going on about this in the manifesto. Where are they? And I think that may push a little bit of money towards the health sector. And I do understand that with what's going on within Ukraine and the world itself, probably military is going to be another area where we're going to be looking at overspend. But if you're going to pay for that, you're going to only take it from somewhere else, because there is only so much money coming into the coffers. So the money that was going to be spent on HS2 or whatever, is that going to be diverted? Because the pot is only a certain size.
So people will soon be packing their swimming trunks and their Speedos. Ken Hatter, I'm looking at you, and heading off on their hollybobs.
Oh, dear.
Do they go with a spring in their step, or do they go with a slight fear and trepidation about what's to come?
I would go with a spring in their step, because we're still okay. Things change very, very quickly in the construction industry, as we know. Nearly £6 billion worth of work is not to be sniffed at. If you look at the quarterly results, because we're at the end of the second quarter, by way of value, from the first quarter, we're down 17%. And by way of project numbers, we're down 23%. I hope that's not a reflection of what's going to happen in the third quarter and the fourth quarter.